Somebody sees her for the first time, if it's small kids, is, mother, look, what is with this girl?
She's able to do things that professional musicians don't necessarily do.
There is a limit to her ability with what she's able to perform. But there is not a limit with her musical talent, with what she has inside of her.
The rest of us suffer from our own image, and she doesn't suffer from that. She just does what's natural to her. And what's natural to her is to play music. The beauty of the music can draw people together and go to their positive nature and help them see each other as human beings deeply. That is really a great thing.
Schramm is a devoutly Orthodox Jewish woman who teaches piano out of her small apartment in Gilo, just outside of Jerusalem. Rasha Hamad is an Arab who lives in nearby Beit Jala, a Palestinian village adjacent to Bethlehem. Rasha, who is both blind and autistic, has been Dvora's student for more than 18 years. Rasha and her sister Nadia, who is blind and deaf, were abandoned by their parents at the ages of 6 and 5. Born in Jenin, a Palestinian town of almost 20,000 in the northern part of the West Bank, they were left in the care of Helene and Edward Volbert, Christian missionaries from Holland who came to Beit Jala in 1982 and established Beit Yamima, a home for handicapped children. The girls had been hidden in a room in their parents' house, cut off from contact with the rest of the family. They could only crawl, were unable to speak, and could not eat without help.
When they came to us, they were very thin, very undernourished, and feeling very bad. They were not used to any normal human contact. They were just shouting, groaning, beating themselves on their heads, pulling on their ears and pushing in their eyes.
The Volberts found themselves dealing with two very disturbed young children. They stayed up nights comforting them when they awakened screaming and crying. They sewed up the sleeves of their clothing until they learned to stop poking at their eyes. Soon, they were feeding themselves and walking. And they made music an important part of Rasha's daily life.
From the beginning that she came in our home, we sang songs with the children. And then one day she heard on a tape that you can sing in harmony, and she started to do it herself. Then we realized that that she has a gift for music, and we decided to try to find an old piano, so that she maybe could also learn to play the piano. From the moment on that she could play the piano, whenever she wanted to make a melody on the piano, she could do it. In the beginning it was quite simple, of course, and later on it became more and more complicated. She developed in such a good way that Helene said, well, my possibilities are restricted. I'm not such a good piano player. She needs really a professional teacher.
Helene and Edward went searching for that teacher at the Jerusalem Conservatory of Music.
Conservatory was established by Amalia Reuel in '73. And she established a conservatory trying to bring in children from any kind of background whether they're Jewish or Muslim or Armenian or Christians. They were welcome to the conservatory. And she tried to make music with all of those children. Also, handicapped children, disabled children. She believed that the music should reach any child that wants to be in that world.
When Helene and Edward first brought Rasha to the conservatory, they tried to explain that in spite of her disabilities, she exhibited signs of being a musical savant. Amalia Ruel and her assistant were convinced that the Volberts, like so many other parents, were exaggerating the talents of their child. But then Rasha sat down at the piano.
She started to play the piano. And then, on that moment, Amalia was turning around at both ladies and saying, "What's this? She's playing classical music." And wow, no, so nothing had to be explained anymore. This was a very special talent.
Amalia called me. I believe I had an infant nearby at the time, because my third daughter was quite small. And I was juggling around between teaching students, holding a baby. You know, it was a very interesting time of life, and the phone rings. And Amalia said that she has a couple sitting in her office with a blind girl. I didn't know how learning disabled she really was. I only knew that she was blind. When she came to me, she was playing, and that was kind of miraculous. And she was playing in a very unusual way, with her hands kind of bunched up and but she was getting around on the instrument. So I took it.
At the time, no one knew the extent of her autism. What was understood was that the neurological disorder severely affected her social interaction and ability to communicate with others.
I didn't know if she was relating to me at all. And as a human being, I really didn't know. I hoped she would have a good time. My idea was that it should be a pleasure with me, because I knew that because she was so withdrawn, that if she didn't look upon me as a source of pleasure, I wasn't going to reach her with anything. Rasha had been so emotionally deprived in the beginning of her life. I couldn't teach her intellectually. I wanted her to want to come and to eventually to build a trust with her. Mostly we communicated with music. I just jumped in there and participated in her world. And when I could add from my professional experience something to help her in her world, I would jump in and do it. And meanwhile, I was assessing her all the time. I was constantly assessing, seeing what I could do.
The work that Dvora does is very, very difficult, and she's 100% committed to it. It's difficult work, and she does it with a lot of love. Dvora has a way to reach children. They will play music, they will love music with Dvora. She is very, very patient with children.
As a teacher, when I look at a student, I look at their potential. I look at them as a human being with a potential to develop. And so when I have a student that has what they call a disability, I look at them a bit differently. And I go, okay, I'll work with you as you are. I'm not just going to put you in a form and make you like society wants you. You're all right as you are. And I want to take you as you are and give you some happiness and share with you what I love. And I'm not going to pity you. I'm going to give to you. That's how I feel. When I started teaching, every pianist wonders, I think, because most pianists cannot only perform. Some can, very few. Most people have to teach. And when I started teaching, I sort of went, thank God I love teaching. Thank God I'm a teacher. I'm not just going to be one of these frustrated pianists that is going to be a real teacher. I was very, very grateful for that.
Dvora came to the conservatory with so many music for Rasha. She took from her home so many books because she needed to have a lot of music in order to see in what mood Russia is. And Dvora decided that the best thing is to be near her library, and very soon she started going to Dvora's home for the lessons.
During the same period of time, Dvora also found herself being drawn closer to the Volbers.
As a Jewish girl growing up against the Christian society, I always have this reticence. I was always having the feeling as a child that I had to prove that Jews were good. The relationship with the Volbers evolved over time. It was almost that I could feel parallelism in their religiosity. She told me things about her life, how her parents had taken in Jews during the Holocaust.
During the war, they her parents felt that they had to help people who needed to hide. So they opened their house for, in total, 11 Jewish people. That was the time that Helene was growing up as a small child. So this was what Helene knew. It's also the care for people and the love for the Jewish people that was a part of her family.
In the intervening days and weeks, as Rasha came to Dvora's home on a regular basis, the bond between the two of them was cemented.
At some point, I felt she's going to understand that I'm helping her in her music. And within a year or two or three, she started little by little to turn to me. And when she started to turn to me, I felt we were developing a teacher-student relationship. It took a long time to develop that.
Just as their relationship began flowering, the 1991 Gulf War erupted. Iraqi Scud missiles began hitting Tel Aviv. Air raid sirens were being sounded on a regular basis. Israelis donned gas masks and created safe rooms in their homes in the event of chemical weapons arriving with the Scuds. Palestinian militants who had been waging the uprising against the Israeli government, known as the Intifada, for more than 3 years, celebrated the Iraqi bombs in the streets of the West Bank. Israeli-Palestinian tensions were now at an all-time high. The Israeli government began closing off Palestinian villages like Beit Jala to the rest of Israel, making Rasha's normally short trip for her lessons a far more complicated affair. And making matters worse, Helene Volber was diagnosed with cancer.
Rasha only managed to get to me because Helene would walk. And that was a hard walk. They would drive their car to the closest point, and then they would walk up this hill to get to Gilo. It was quite miraculous, especially considering what condition Helene was in. But that's the kind of devotion that she had, bringing Rasha.
Shortly after the end of the Gulf War, there was a breakthrough in the Israeli-Palestinian crisis. The Israeli government and the PLO sat down and negotiated what became known as the Oslo Accords, signed in 1993 with much hope and praise at the White House. As much of the world celebrated this achievement, a breakthrough was also occurring in Dvora's home with Rasha.
I think that the breakthrough happened as a result of a lot of steady progress. At the beginning, she played things she liked. Eventually, we tried to work on Bach minuets and little sonatinas. It almost sketched out a normal development. But I was always waiting for the day that she would really use her hand. When we tried to play, a sonata where you need to play scales with all your fingers, she would just use her fifth finger and just go very fast up. It was quite amazing, actually. And I would constantly say, Rasha, use your hand, Rasha, use your hand. And it didn't quite happen. But I would show her, I don't know what I did. One day she was at my house, and I sensed that somehow she'd understand. And I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and maybe I felt her fingers or something, and I felt a recognition side of her. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, something happened in there. But, you know, for me, that little something was like conquering the world. I was so excited because it opened up to her everything in the repertoire. For the first time, I could say, if I can get her to relate, each finger is a number. I can say, Rasha, 1, 2, 3, 1, do it this way, do it this way. And that was a wonderful, wonderful moment of my life as a teacher. I don't think I could ever surpass that one. I hope I will, but I don't know that I ever will. Not just as a teacher, as a human being, to be able to open a door like that. It's just tremendous.
Very soon, Dvora took Rasha into the class concerts at the conservatory. And Rasha was playing with regular children at the class concerts here.
It was like a miracle. Then you realize after so many years what she has reached and what has happened to this child. It's amazing.
Rasha entered a period of steady development in her lessons with Dvora. She even began showing a preference for certain kinds of music.
She loves Chopin. Loves Chopin. She loves Brahms. All these romantic composers. That's her. It's amazing when you consider where she's coming from. Locked in, you know, born in Jenin, alone in a room. She didn't hear it as a child. Where did she get her love for Chopin and Rachmaninoff? It could be because the Follbears constantly played classical music. They even brought Rasha to concerts of the Israel Philharmonic.
There was also another talent that Rasha was beginning to exhibit. One that clearly established that she was a musical savant.
Rasha has special pieces that come out of her spontaneously on occasions, and she calls them kanua. And sometimes I don't even know if she just comes up with them when she's at my house. Usually they take like a form of a rondo. She has a main idea, and then she does some other idea, and she goes back to the idea, and she does variations, and she comes back. It's like she has an independent artistic life. It shows she isn't just parroting the music she learns. She also has her individual artistic life.
As Rasha thrived, a tragedy was unfolding. Helene's cancer had spread and was now terminal. In October 1999, Helene's valiant struggle ended.
The first image that comes to my mind is Helene's funeral. I looked at Rasha and I saw grayness in her color. I saw a terrible vision. I was deeply concerned. It was worse than paleness. They had her play the organ in the church during the service. And I just looked at her and my heart was so heavy.
Rasha's lessons continued in the weeks and months after Helene's death. But it wasn't the same.
After her breakthrough, we were going so fast and so well. And she was getting so much and grasping so much. And then I found her at a plateau, which is so normal because of this trauma. And I tried to work within and against it in a way, but even so, I was finding she wasn't able to take in like she had before.
1999 turned into 2000. Edward was now bringing Rasha to Dvora's home on a regular basis for her lessons. Slowly, the trauma of losing Helene started to ease for her. But just as she began making progress again musically, there was a new political trauma to deal with. Peace talks between then Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and Palestinian Authority President Yasser Arafat collapsed at Camp David in the fall of 2000. A new Palestinian uprising, the Al-Aqsa Intifada, soon erupted.
The first Intifada was less of a problem, maybe because the Fulbears had Dutch passports. But this last one was very, very difficult. And there were many times that they would get to the checkpoint and couldn't get through, and that made Rasha very, very nervous.
At the same time, Dvora's Gilo neighborhood soon found itself on the front lines of this new intifada. Palestinian militants took over the streets of Beit Jala and began shooting at homes and cars very close to her apartment. The Israeli Defense Forces responded, often setting up camps and returning the gunfire, literally a few hundred feet away from Dvora's home. And in nearby Jerusalem, Palestinian suicide bombers were regularly blowing up passenger buses and setting off bombs in shopping malls and other public places, killing or wounding hundreds of Israelis.
My daughters were going to funerals. It was a very difficult time, all around. I suppose, in a way, it deepened our relationship because I knew that the people in Yemima weren't shooting at me, and they knew that I wasn't shooting at them. But we were sort of caught in this horrible situation. They would call me to say that where there was a closure and they didn't think they could get through, and I said, "Is everybody all right?" Because we heard our apartment is situated in such a way we can hear both kinds of fire. We got pretty good at recognizing which kind of fire was coming from where. And then they'd say something to me like, were your children crying? Are they all right? And I'd say, well, yes, we're all right. And I'd ask them, how are your children doing? And they'd say, well, some of them, their children, were crying and it was hard for them. And we would reminisce about how it was affecting us. My youngest daughter, there was one night there was all this really loud firing going on. And it was really quite a sound. It was not something that made for being calm. She was very nervous. She started to become a little hysterical. I don't want to die, and these sorts of things. And I said, Elisa, aren't you a little bit worried about Rasha and her people? They're also suffering. And she said to me, you're right, Ima. I hadn't thought of that. And it calmed her down.
Sometimes, when the violence caused closures between Palestinian cities like Beit Jala and the rest of Israel, it became next to impossible for Rasha and Edward to make it through for her lessons or performances.
When we would try to get a concert together, and I'd get excited and say, oh, Rasha, let's do a concert of Chopin. And she had plenty of pieces we could do, and then she couldn't come in. Or even worse, we got a little concert together in between when she could come in, and then they couldn't get through to play the concert, which must have been devastating for her.
I remember also from that time that Rasha then started to complain about it. Cannot go through, why not? And then she really was angry about it, and yeah, then you have to explain it, and it's very difficult to explain, of course.
Concert for Rasha's concert is something to look forward to. And when you take that away from a musician, it's terrible. One time during all this, Rasha came after she hadn't been able to come for a while, and she came right into my house, and she sat down at the piano, and she just poured out joy. And I said, yes, Rasha, I'm so happy you're here.
In 2001, during a visit to Holland, Edward met a teacher named Joka. They corresponded, fell in love, and decided to marry. But his newfound happiness was mixed with sadness. Joka had a daughter and grandchildren with whom she was very close, as well as a career. Edward came to the realization that the time had come for him to move back to Holland.
When I think back about that time, it's really the most black time of my life. It was so difficult, and also the reaction of pain of the children. Russia did not say so much. Sometimes she just repeated, are you all going? To prepare her so much was not really easy, because with the others I could talk much better, but the communication with Russia with words is always very restricted.
When Edward told me that he was going to be leaving, I said, oh, I have to do something here. And I concocted a little concert to give her a sense of closure.
When the concert started, we suddenly heard that it was a concert in our honor, and that we were the center of everything, and that was very special. I never thought about this and was not prepared for it, but well, it was a very positive surprise.
Intifada, Edward leaving, all these things happening have made Ratcha's development definitely slower.
But creating a structured daily routine for Rasha, something vital for those afflicted with autism, has helped these setbacks from permanently affecting her progress. Maintaining that structure is paramount for the volunteers at Beit Yemima who help to care for her.
We now at the time we have 32 children. Most of the time the children came here because it was too much for the family to take care of them. Sometimes I feel that it is a shame to have handicapped children. They don't know how to deal with them because they cannot understand how they behave and why they behave like this. It's really special about Rasha that she can understand what you ask her, that she can ask us what she wants when she has a problem. She can do it because we give her a fixed day program, for example. We give her a structure in her life. A typical day for Rasha is first we bring them to school. After this she comes to the day activity, and there she is for 2.5 hours. And then she can play for free on the piano if she wants. She can choose if she wants to play piano or to do something else. Most of the time she wants to play.
What sets Rasha apart from the other residents at Beit Yemima is her musical talent and her relationship with Devora. Without these elements in her life, while she would be well cared for, her daily routine, as well as her future, would be very limited.
The relationship between Rasha and Devora is really something special because it's difficult to have a good relationship with Rasha. But when she's with Devora, they have something together which we don't have.
But in the fall of 2003, that special relationship almost came to an abrupt end. Greater demands on the limited resources of Beit Yemima led its administrators to make a number of financial cutbacks, including Rasha's weekly piano lessons. Devora was told that by the end of the year, Rasha would not be able to continue with her studies.
I had invested so much of my life and thought into teaching her. I had lived for finding a way to reach her. What would happen to her? I was the person that had known her, the one stable thing. She'd lost her parent figures, she'd still had me, and this was going to go also.
organized a special concert for Rasha, convinced that it would be her last. But then word got out around the conservatory about the possibility of Rasha's lessons ending. All of a sudden, donations began coming in from the parents of Dvora's other students. And an article about Rasha and Dvora in Israel's largest daily newspaper brought in even more money, enough to keep Rasha at the conservatory for the foreseeable future. Dvora decided a special celebration concert was in order. Many of the conservatory's students whose parents had helped to keep Rasha's lessons going would take part in the performance. And she put Rasha together with a special ensemble. Ye'eli, a girl from an Orthodox Jewish family, and Ehud and Talia, whose families are secular Jews. The piece Dvora chose for Rasha to perform with them was Saint-Saëns' Carnival of the Animals.
The Carnival of the Animals was something that she had done previously, and now that she's developed more and has more pianistic ability, I thought it would be very nice to take it back out and polish a few of the sections, because she used to really like it. She loves music that's basically colorful, romantic harmony. I wanted to give her the enjoyment of playing with others, because she has a wonderful sense of playing with other people. It's an uncanny sense beyond even professional musicians.
It's amazing that she's capable of playing at that level. It seems like some sort of miracle that she's able to play like that.
To make the concert even more special, Dvora planned a surprise for Rasha with the ensemble. She wrote an arrangement of one of Rasha's original compositions, which she calls kanuas, and then rehearsed it with her fellow musicians without her knowing.
Playing Rasha's Kanua with all the musicians just came out of the experience of working with all of them together. They were so wonderful and positive and enjoying playing together with her. And our rehearsals were so much fun. I just said, oh, let's just do this. She didn't know it until we got up to perform. The same night that we performed, right in the rehearsal, all of a sudden she heard her piece all around her and her face lit up and she went, wow. Rasha was happy. It was wonderful. After the concert, she gave me a necklace that she had made, which is amazing because in the old days, she couldn't use her fingers for anything except to destroy things. It's a symbol of Rasha more calm than she used to be.
When Rasha first came into Dvora's life, her daughters, Efrat, Sarit, and Netta, were small children. Alisa, her youngest, hadn't been born. Today, Efrat is married and the mother of Dvora and her husband Len's first grandchild, a boy.
It's certainly given us a very unique and touching experience. We've all been part of this. She's definitely influenced my family, and I'm glad that they could be here for this experience. I'm very, very happy my daughters could grow up in an open atmosphere.
It really helps when people are learning and playing with those who aren't like them. It helps because then they can see that essentially they're all alike. I very much want to continue to play with Rasha.
The whole thing about playing together teaches you so much about life itself. Music is about listening to each other, helping each other. It's impossible to do only in music and not think about it. again when you're in the regular life you're leading.
It starts with only two people, Rasha, Dvora. Then there is another circle around them who sees that there is something special, it's beautiful, it's good. And then you always have the hope that maybe a wider circle will continue and that it will spread.
I came to Israel to share my music with my people. But I suppose that God has sent me other people to share it with. Maybe that's what happens here. If we look deeply at another person, we see another person. When we look at headlines, we see generalities. All of us need to look at people.